Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Thursday, December 19th, 2024, and you are in the Java Cafe. I want to welcome everyone that is listening and watching over on Instagram. Shout out to Brother Jermaine, the main show, Alex Edwards, Miss Ayana. Ayana, email me, please, because we need to get things set up for Monday for your young people. info@Java with Jimmy. Shout out to former State House Representative Representative Carlos Enriquez, who was in the building. Keys, good morning to you over on Instagram in the morning. Also, let's go on the Java Cafe and see who is in there. Asia, good morning to you. Michelle D. Smith, good morning to you. The Real Boston Media, what's up, folks? Good to see you in the building. Donna Williams in the building. My mother Java in the building. Pastor Marion is in the building as well. So a lot of low energy going on this morning because, we have a guest coming in at 10:10. And today we were originally scheduled to do our catch up that we do with what I call a shot of Java, events that I've went to, opinions and whatnot. And so yesterday we had Mayor Michelle Wu on, and she talked about the resident tax relief. And I've been watching for a while. And if you follow me on Twitter, I've shared some things from a Twitter account called Four Pointer, who is an equity guy down around things, construction and usage in the seaport. So shout out to that account over on Twitter. It concerned me because at the end of the day, what the mayor had attempted to do was try to have the commercial folks, the business industry, absorb some of the tax increase. Tax increases happen all the time. There's been some research in the past 14 hours. And so I've learned a lot reading some things, talked with a couple of folks. I've talked with a couple of Black real estate folks, prominent and in our community, understands Black dollar, but also understands housing equity and affordability. And so I did due diligence to attempt to, I'm going to be transparent. I am not a journalist. I am a commentator, and I try to be as balanced as possible. But when I see things that look like they could be against equity, and there are a lot, and do I cover everything, and do I meet everybody's expectation of what I should cover and how? No. But this one, I've been watching, and there is a relationship. We're hospitable. We've had some interesting, passionate debates, and this will be another one. The senator has also appreciated the impact here. He's brought me into the State House and cited, I think it was our 1st to 2-year anniversary. So, there is a lot with this tax relief bill, and we are going to learn his position as to why he opposed it, how and the way and the timing of it. And so he is going to come in a few moments, in about 3 minutes, and be with us. I wanted to go back to Instagram and say hello to folks that are on there. And Keys, thank you for putting that for Ayana. I also wanted to remind everyone that on this Friday, some of you may be aware that our icon in equity, icon in racial justice, icon in criminal justice reform, transitioned and is now an ancestor, and that is in the person of our Don Muhammad. And so I want to share some information with you about his services that are taking place this Friday at Morning Star Baptist Church. And I don't know why I can't find it because I just seen it a few minutes ago. Is this it? Nope, that one's not it. That one's not it either. Okay. I thought I saw it. If anyone has the flyer, please text it to me. I thought I saw it this morning on Senator Liz Miranda's page. I'm looking now just to share the information with you all. And nope. Okay, but it is at Morning Star, I believe. Of course, there's a viewing. There is a viewing. I remember the flyer. I believe the viewing is from 3 to 4 or 3 to 5. There's a 45-minute public comment statement, and then there is the service. And so I believe viewing starts at 3 p.m. If anyone has the flyer or knows, just please put it in the comments. It would be greatly appreciated. Back into the cafe. Vaughn, good morning. Good to see you in the room. Asia, good morning to you. Sister Debbie, Auntie Paula. I think I got everybody over on Facebook. Sister Soraya, we got the Real Boston Media. The folks over on wow, the information just popped up. Look at Jesus. So the family has shared the following: Friday, December 20th, 2024. The wake, as I thought, is from 3 to 5 p.m. Community comments are from 5 p.m. to 5:45 p.m. Unsolicited. I ain't talked to the family. Don't let your comments be more than 2 minutes. And the service will begin at 6 p.m. That is taking place at Morning Star Baptist Church on Friday, 1257 Blue Hill Avenue in Mattapan. And so we again want to ask you to keep the family in prayer. Sister Virginia, Brother Rodney, Brother Randy, his family there, those that he's mentored. This man will forever have an impact in this city. And it's so, interesting that in thinking about him, I can't go without thinking about the fact of his voice during a period in our city where it was it was one of the worst times, I think, right next to busing, the demonstration of racism through allowed actions, solicited actions by the mayor that released a barrage of wrongful police engagement. And he was a voice against that. And in that vein, this evening at 9 p.m., one of the most impacted, next to his uncle and other family members, Joey Bennett, will be with us for an exclusive sit-down, one-on-one Java After Dark, Black Java, no sugar, no cream. And you know what that means. He's going to come with us at 9 p.m. this evening live here in the studio. It's very different when we're sitting in person. And so please plan to join us this evening at 9 p.m. Joey Bennett will be with us. Also, some other programming. Today's Thursday. So Monday, we will talk with Ayana Bean from I think it's Boss Up, her program. Carlos is giving us, thank you, brother. Oh, I thought I seen it on social media. The text popped up. Thank you. We'll reiterate the services. The services are at 6 p.m. On Friday for Minister Don. Monday, Ayana Bean and her young people are coming in to talk about youth entrepreneurship. And on Tuesday, on Christmas Eve, we are going to share last year's live recording of the Christmas music on on a former partnership. And also, we're going to share our time. I am going to sit with the governor tomorrow, look at her decorations there in the governor's chambers, and just chat with her about a few things. So we'll air that on Tuesday. And the 26th will be our last day of programming for the year. I'm going to do it. A couple of brothers outside of my team have assertively told me that I have to stick to the fact of no programming between January 26th and December 26th and January 6th. And so, which is an interesting date. And so Senator Collins is in. I want to give him the opportunity to get as much time. We're going to be with him till about 10:25. And let's go and chat with our senator. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Jimmy. How you doing?
Nick, I'm senator. I'm sorry. You got a decent little setup there. I like the, tech thing from when you were on back in Zoom. It was a different aesthetic in the day. Good morning to you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Good. That is good. When I've said that, we have had some debates, but we're hospitable. And I had reached out a couple of weeks ago to check in reference to why it had appeared that you had some concerns and opposition with the mayor's tax relief. And so you responded yesterday and said, let's talk about it. So that's why we're here. And so, Senator, I have to just begin with a very simple question as to why. What was the reasoning behind your opposition to what he was proposing? And in that, if you could also be very specific about the timing in which you raised the alarm and concern in a manner that this did not go through.
Sure. Thanks very much, Jimmy, and I appreciate your having me on and being fair. So this debate began in the late spring, early summer. A report came out in February suggesting that over the course of the next decade, shifts in commercial values due to the aftermath of the pandemic and how office space was being utilized in the advent of remote work. Initially rejected by city officials, but later on in the spring filed a home rule petition that would raise commercial property taxes beyond the state law. And I know, it was brought up in the mayor's interview, and some others had tried to compare it to Watertown, apples to oranges. And that, by me saying that, means currently in the city of Boston, the tax burden for city services is 60% commercial and 40% residential. In Watertown, it was the direct opposite, 60% residential, 40% commercial. And this bill that Watertown pushed on the legislature that we approved last year would balance it off 50-50. So it's very different, not even remotely close. They are actually asking for what Boston had as it relates to the ability to tax commercial at 175% of their value. So as that debate started in the summer, the calls for legislative approval were based on, and the hearings are there from the June hearing. Can share with you the link from the mayor and her team, and continued over the course of the summertime, suggesting that in absent this legislation, residential taxpayers would see a 33% increase in their homes value, in terms of their taxes, and would risk losing them, which did not bear out in the end. It was not data driven, and we can get to how.
So can I ask you, can I chime in here and ask you this? My understanding is, and from what I don't have the exact verbiage, and I Senator, you got me with some notes over here. It was presented, it's not a definite, that it could be a wide range and as worse as up to 33%, and then can result. And so I just ask you, is that something that you would agree with, saying rather than they presented 33%, that it was presented that at worst it could be up to a range of 33?
I think that's, I think that's a lot of wordsmithing. I think if you take a look at the hearing,
I would say it's accuracy.
Oh no, you can look at the hearing and make the judgment on your own, and also the press reports. So that hearing, I'll send you the link. You can share it if you wish. That was from.
But right now, since you have that information, very familiar, can you confirm or not for me if it was presented as a wide at the top of the range at 33%? Yes or no?
There were the dialogue was about 33%, and it was carried across the board. I mean, we had people from different groups carrying the same message.
Can we agree that it was stated at worst?
Okay, here's what we know. We know this. When asked for the data along the way,
yes, sir,
including a meeting with the mayor in the Senate after the legislative session, formal session ended, we had a meeting because that bill only came over to the Senate the last day of session, didn't make it. So it's not the first home rule petition we've done in informal session, similar to the liquor license legislation that we passed and worked on collaboratively across the city and state. And that was to help Boston. And we're very proud of that work. That happened in August. So, with unanimous consent, legislation has passed. When we met, we asked for the data because we knew valuations were coming in, and that was what this was based off of. Valuations that the city had to submit to the state. We asked in that meeting for the data. The commissioner of assessing was willing to do that. Mayor stopped him. So, well, we'd like to wait until we submit this with the state. Never came.
Is this the piece? I don't know all the names, but basically when the mayor, and I just have like bullet notes here, but the process and like the values pieces, this and that, and when that
valuations, yes, because that's what would determine what revenue was coming into the city.
Okay.
And where we saw, sorry, yeah, so commercial properties that she was suggesting downtown that I don't represent, that would see a
you say downtown, Senator. So you say downtown, but may I ask you, you do represent a part of downtown, very distinct, but let's be clear that there is you represent the Seaport District.
Right, but they're not the you can have a reaction to that, but they're not the properties that no longer have tenants. Those are in the downtown area. So that suggestion was the value drops that would come would with this legislation passing would give them actually less of a nominal tax, not a tax rate. It'll be an increased tax rate, but less of a nominal tax. What we saw and what I was concerned about, what bore out, Sweet Life and Lower Mills, they didn't lose value this year in their commercial value.
Okay.
If this bill would have passed, they would have been hit disproportionately on this tax.
That is what we heard the loudest was from the retail community. In addition, as you know, there was a ballot initiative, question 5, that was also scaring a lot of the restaurant owners who we supported greatly in the aftermath of the pandemic, who are still struggling. And that is a serious issue. The retail and the restaurant community that employ a lot of people on our main streets. But bringing up question 5, I just have to highlight the point that the people went for the fact of keeping things that the those wage earners won't suffer from a lot of the ambiguity of how that was going to be handled. Side note there, and I want to keep us that we got about 5 minutes. So there's a few things, and
you asked the question about timing, James. So I want to be clear about that. In public, in August, in September, this notion I was hiding in the weeds till December is nonsense. And you can look at the publications: State House News, the Boston Herald, Contrarian, and the
I don't know who said until December because it's been in the media.
I was waiting to the 11th hour. My position was clear, and we asked for the data. You got to make data-driven decisions. Why did the city assessor refuse at a city council hearing to give that data to the city council?
Because you do the rates and also the understanding and right, wrong, and different. There are 180,000 parcels that have to be assessed. You also got to
submitted it the day before Thanksgiving, and when after I tabled the bill the first time, and I asked the mayor, will you share us the data? Well, the DOR may not have it certified, so we really can't do that. The DOR certifies it the next day. All of a sudden, it gets released. And what does it tell us? It tells us that the mayor would need to. This is not something that does up to the legislature. This is something that only municipal leaders can do. Raising residential tax rates, and she raised residential tax rates 9% last year. She said if this legislation was going to pass, she would still do a rate increase of 9% on property owners in Boston. And so we had a 1.5% delta.
Hold on.
We had a 1.5% delta there.
With that, and the 1.5% delta is now what, that next year or this would, I don't exactly know how the years work because, the tax year within the fiscal year of the city budget and all that other stuff. Some of the semantics I'm not all the way versed like you on, but what the why, finalize the gut of the why in reference to the ultimate. Were you concerned about impact on the commercial industry? There were the meetings with the business industry. They went back. And so though I asked the question here, I have to finish this statement by saying, sir, the most impact, the greatest impact in those that are going to struggle the most, do you agree are going to be either commercial impact or those that are in commercial property ownership or residents?
It's both. It's both. I
asked most.
It's both because the people who work at the restaurants and the retail, you can say no, James, but it's all relative, my friend.
I asked the impacts with the definitive answer, yes or no,
and the people who live. And on residents, this is what we did in the legislature. While the city took their tact, senior circuit breaker tax credit, family and child tax credit, earned income tax credit, all doubled. To provide
and
relief.
Also in the proposal, there was some advantages
of what you're talking about.
Businesses. There were in the proposals. There was because they went back, they renegotiated with the small businesses.
And we saw how that went, and we saw how that's gone with cannabis. We saw how that went during the pandemic. We're picking winners and losers. You can't help everybody. There's not enough money to go around, and usually they're getting it well past the time.
Okay, so let's move on a little bit to that point. Not enough money and can't help everybody. One of the things that you proposed, we didn't get a full definition of as to why it sounds like you were trying to protect both the commercial and the residents. And that is just very interesting because you had the mass, and I don't have all of them right, Senator, but the mass tax law advocate folks and whatnot were all in favor of this. The thing for me is that it did not seem equitable.
Yeah, they don't represent the people I represent, James.
They don't represent the people, but the Senator, you want to talk about the people you represent, the people.
Yes, and it's always suggested I represent the Seaport in South Boston, which I represent all of Dorchester.
I'm going a different
South End, a bit of Roxbury, Back Bay, Chinatown,
parts of Dorchester, and some, I think, still a little bit. I know some of your district changed. Of Mattapan, that Senator, sir, the concern really is that those.
Unfortunately, I don't represent Mattapan anymore, but
you don't have any parts. Okay. But there are people within that district. I wasn't going Seaport. I was saying that and that's who I'm really talking about. Those that will be most impacted by this tax increase. Let's be clear. Commercial still got a lower rate in this than at the worst. They're
still at 175. Look at Watertown. It was at 150.
But we're not, Senator.
It was brought up yesterday on the show. We want what Watertown wants. Watertown wanted what we had, which was
Watertown was
175% ability to tax commercial.
Well, in this time right now, commercial. Senator, let's do some level setting here.
Yep.
A lot of the advantage, and let's keep it 100. A lot of the advocacy. And maybe push, because I'm aware I watched a couple of interviews, listened, and looked at a few articles. And there was an impression you had a very interesting interview with a couple of folks down by Copley. I was a little surprised. And, just some of that, sir, and I'll be honest, it was my thought and it was more affirmation. But if you look at things like the transfer fee, if you look at things like, some of the response to the migrants coming at Seaport, if you look at some of the things in home ownership on that end, let me back up first. There are some things that you have voted for, introduced, and got passed that have trickled down and improved some level of equity. But then there's some other things, Senator, that just make me sit here and go, what is the ultimate, I guess, goal or desire? Is it equity, or is it for large corporate business owners, or is it for the voters and that population, not Seaport, the other population that you talked about, where these things that you went against, when the outcome happens, also, we don't know what things are going to look like in DC and how that's going to translate.
Well, first of all, I would say, and it's clear because I was out there publicly too. I was one of the first elected officials to make clear to people who were rattling the saber that that almost all the folks that were coming here were eligible for TPS. So this notion that everyone's here illegally, and particularly around the Haitian community, you can look at all that, James, beginning of the year, and my defense that. So trying to position me otherwise is not fair. But with respect to what was influencing, with respect to what was influencing decisions, that story around campaign fundraising, in the same period of time, the mayor took in 3 times as much from the same parties. And if you look at my campaign fundraising from the last 4 election cycles, the even year, it's the same. There's no surge. Last year was not an election year.
I didn't ask you about it.
You brought up the interview. So I full disclosure, full transparency on Java with Jimmy, that those are the facts. And by the way, it's all public information.
And it's public.
Anybody can analyze that the way they want.
It's public.
It was interesting how 3 publications had it on the morning of the vote.
Let's Senator, with respectfully, let's cut to the chase and ask, some of the concern. I'm going to be real with you. And some energy and some perspective and lenses changed, and you get this post the election. I think you can understand some concern, and we've talked about this face to face and stuff before, that in this time, looking at some ways that some of your colleagues and demographic like you move, it causes us to be like, are you really for equity, decreasing the wealth gap, improving home ownership for Black and brown folks, doing what it is that we can do to embrace our migrant, whether they come by force or come by decision? It is. And I'm going to be, sir, I did reach out to speak to you personally and didn't get a response. So I have to ask here. In all fairness, Senator showed me and proved to me he had 107 texts that he has yet to get back to. So I'm going to be fair.
Somehow my number go there and I get flooded with texts. So I apologize for that. But yes, I mean, look at my record. 14 years in the legislature. You don't get to serve 14 years in the legislature with the support of your constituents if you're doing things that you suggested I was doing. Number one. Number two, I didn't
get a chance to look at your ward and precincts votes, and unfortunately, I don't know if the state does, but some of the exit poll specifics aren't as well as they are on a national level. Because I went to troll, or I went to look at just some of the demographics. In that vein, can you tell me?
I mean, my record is my record, and that can be examined. I'm proud of my record. I'm proud of my record. You asked about home ownership. You asked about home ownership.
Mm-hmm.
When GE came and was sold, what did we do with the winnings? That was in Fort Point area, my district. We put it towards a home ownership program that was announced in Mattapan for low income and moderate income homeowners with Rep. Russell Holmes. And you can ask him about it, but it's out there publicly if you want to look at it on home ownership. This year, proud supporter of the Affordable Home, proud supporter of the Affordable Homes Act. Please, I mean, look, if you hear I appreciate you letting me come on, but if I could finish my sentence. Affordable Homes Act, Economic Development Bill had all sorts of equity elements in there. I'm proud to be the sponsor of, even though, again, I talked about earlier, the grant program, you come with these with the best intentions, and the equity, the social equity fund for cannabis, and we've seen some of the pitfalls of doing that. Delays. People don't get it in time, and now they're in arrears. So my record is clear on those issues, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of also the support.
What about transfer fee?
I'm sorry?
What about the transfer fee, the 0.2% that could have went to? I'm going back to the notes.
Yeah, that was sent to study, and there wasn't much support for that.
Yeah, Senator,
I said on the show a couple of days ago. In the end, it wasn't in favor of
study, it. Senator,
I just said I wasn't in favor. So you can go down the rabbit hole if you want. But my point is this: you have a difference of opinion clearly, and others may have too. But on the merits, on the whole, we have delivered on an equity agenda. We have delivered on providing relief to homeowners and taxpayers in the legislature. And when a bill that's pushed, suggesting everyone's going to, without data to back it up, 33%, 33%, and then it ends up at 10.5, Jeremy, with 10.5, when the mayor says, regardless if this passes,
in that vein, let me ask you,
raise residential taxes 9%. So what's the 1.5 delta? We can do a couple of things.
1.5 delta is probably
the residential
all
relief.
The assessments were done.
Is this an interview or is this,
This is a little bit of an interview debate.
Okay. Yeah. So residential exemption, we would support increasing the residential exemption from 35 to 40%. The Moody's report also suggests we are stockpiling money in our rainy day fund. Some of it's being used for housing. None of it's being used for residential relief. Residential relief was never on the table, Jimmy. Suggesting there was residential relief on the table is nonsense. It never was.
Senator, I want to go back to one point. Okay. And when you talk about the deficit of the 1.5, that is either, again, I'm learning about this whole tax process. That is either this year without what the mayor proposed. We don't know if that 10.5 is going to increase over the next. This was a proposal for, I believe, up to 3 years to have this special dispensation, if you will. You said go against the law. They were requesting special dispensation. Yep. We don't know what the tax rate is going to look like next year. And again, I'm trying to drive the point that what concerns
year to year, though, James. In the budget for the city, this is all based on a budget.
And it is based on
arbitrary. It's all based on a budget. Every year we do a budget because we're accountable to the taxpayers at the city level and the state level. It's not an arbitrary thing. And I'm also proud of my record on.
You're making my point.
What's that?
You're making my point.
How's that?
Because when I was trying to ask you that, what is it that we are going to do that when that 10 point, you talk about a deficit this year where it landed fine. But what if next year is 12.7?
Here's what we can't do. We can't have $600 million of ARPA funds come in. $400 million in ESSER funds.
And we're going to get to the
$75 million are on the table right now with the state for transportation investments. Why are we taking out the credit card? Debt service payments went up over the last 3 years, $100 million. We have a fiscal management problem in the city. We do not have a revenue problem, and we do not have we need more tax revenue.
You may say that
8% increase in the budget. Why?
Senator, you may say that, but at the end of the day, by law, they have to balance the budget. And yes, the budget went up 7, some say 8%, but you got to also understand you're talking about budget cuts. And I want to ask you a specific question about budget cuts that that concerns me. There was a comparison made, and you said, there is a gap, and I don't have all the things, but I saw something about, maybe $150 million, something around his taxes, and you were saying that it could be made up. I don't want to conflate, but what you proposed in cutting, from what I saw, didn't measure up to that gap. The other piece is one of the things that you proposed cutting, or had some conversation about, is Michael Bobbitt shop. The Mass Cultural Council gives out grants and whatnot. City of Boston has cultural council or grants.
There are duplicative programs that can be paused. There are duplicative programs that can be paused. But here are the 4 ways.
Can I finish?
Rainy day funds wouldn't impact the bond rating. That's according to Moody's. Please let me finish. James, you can critique it all day long. This is your show. You have all day long to critique me. Redirecting funds from the Blue Bike program that get generated now, $50,000 a whack. You want to build housing, you got to give the Blue Bike program $50,000. You can put that to residential relief. Some of the redundant programs,
Senator,
prudent efficiencies that the governor did last year to balance a 2.7% budget, along with economic growth and providing tax relief, just like the mayor of Chicago just did. It's all doable, and it's all within our power at the local level. This started off, no matter what, they're raising 9% on the taxpayers, and it ended up, without legislation, it would be 10.5%. That 1.5% delta can be made up, and it doesn't need to be done while risking cratering the Boston economy. I stand firmly behind that position.
Can I ask you something that I just observed? What you just did there, was that a prediction?
What's that?
Essentially, you did a comparison similar to what you said the mayor did to City and Watertown. You just did a comparison and somewhat of a prediction of what happened. I believe this was in response to the ambiguity around, we don't know what the tax rate is going to be next year in Chicago, their percentages. That's a little bit of a prediction, right?
What's that?
That's a little bit of a prediction, right?
What is the prediction? I'm sorry.
That what you just named was a little bit of a prediction in comparison. You said that's what happened in Chicago. You were responding to my...
No, the mayor of Chicago just made modest efficiencies and cuts to prevent raising residential taxes on Chicago homeowners. That just happened.
Okay. And
that's a progressive mayor.
And
the city of San Francisco is going 15% across the board. We don't need to do that.
We don't need to do that, but I never got to finish the thing where you're talking about other cities and these percentages in the increase in the budget. I started here by saying you proposed cutting the budget. Are you aware that a lot of that budget increase is because, and when you cut budget, Senator, and give me at least one, this is the third one, 3 for the stripes. Yes or no? When you start talking budget cuts, generally where, municipal level, where are the first cuts made? Yes or no in basic city services?
No, that's ridiculous. It's external programs. The non-essential programs, debt service, those are obligations that we have, regardless, they're by covenant, and collective bargaining agreements. Those aren't the ones that get touched.
That's a
it's
big
external
part
programs. Look at what Mayor Menino did. James, you worked for Mayor Menino. He cut the budget. He cut the budget to 1.5% growth. Please. He also furloughed staff.
And in a very different economic time.
Different economic time, maybe. But their comparison is, the Mayor Menino did this. Let's do what he did. Okay, he put a hiring freeze in on non-union employees. He furloughed senior staff. They took cuts for 3 years. That doesn't have to happen here. We're talking about a 1.5% delta. There's a way to do this without.
And we got to this point. I don't know if you ever got
like this legislation and massive cuts like the city of San Francisco. This is all within the power. It's doable. The revenue's there. We have a stockpiled rainy day fund, and there's a way to use a scalpel and not a hatchet.
But Senator, there's some concerns here even about that, because whether agree with or not, there's going to be some negative things coming down the pike. Massachusetts and Boston, despite some actions of some, is a very progressive, and we are going to be protected around health and the immigration thing through our governor and mayor. But the penalty of that will probably be some federal cuts. So it was wise on the mayor to that whole credit rating thing to ensure that that got to where it needed to be. And also the governor, and we're not talking, necessarily about state budget right now, but then also, they're going to have to reserve some of these rainy day funds for whatever shortfalls are going to come over the next year. And so with considering budget cuts and things like that, and a lot of them, Senator, were involving finalization. You talk about collective bargaining. A lot of that 7% includes finalized budget cuts that sometimes include retroactive to when the budget, the contract was supposed to be signed. And so we want to be fair about that number. The argument about
the number is 3%.
That number is 3%. Okay, so you accept a budget increase in 4% is not that much. And by state law, every municipality has to prove that they're going to balance it. And so I don't
We didn't have the information this entire time. Yeah, I asked the question, James, why wouldn't the data be shared? You're a transparent guy. Why wouldn't data be shared? You're asking lawmakers to make a decision.
I can't answer
the data. You submit it before Thanksgiving, the day before, and then you want to withhold it and ask us to vote on something.
Is it because they did not have it in reference
to
the
assessment? They submitted it. The assessor was willing to hand it over in September. Mayor stopped him. And then to come to hearing in front of the city council, refused to share it.
At the end of the day, we went into a lot of
the question is why? Why would they? And people ask me that. Why would they refuse
out of this?
Why would they refuse to hold?
Senator, at the end of the day, there were seniors at your office. There was one mayor, 14 city councilors twice, and a whole business community that went back and got to resolution that at the end of the day, the commercial and the businesses were willing to accept more of a responsibility, and the residents would have not absorbed as much. And now that is not the case, and we're left with ambiguity of what the rate is going to look like.
No, we're not. We know exactly what the rate is. They had voted on it 2 weeks ago, James. Are you willing to agree on facts that the city was committed to raising residential tax rates 9%, just like they did last year? Regardless, if this bill passed,
see anything on that's I can agree.
It's in the press. It's clear that the city and mayor are clear. And now, without it, it would be 10.5. When all along it was 33%, and that was based off of no data. So
we went back to 33.
We cannot make decisions without data, James. We don't make policy without data. It's just facts. That's how we do it in the Senate.
And Senator,
we don't make decisions without data.
We'll end with this. I'm curious to what the data. My whole concern here is, and I think as much as we went back and forth, you can appreciate healthy debate and agree that my thing is equity. And I'm concerned that the impact of not having the flexibility that the mayor proposed in the resident-driven tax relief, it is not going to equitably fan out.
There wasn't any tax relief, James. There was no residential relief was never on the table. 9%. That's not relief. That's not relief.
You don't. Okay. Yes. One final. Can I get a yes or no out of you? Do you agree that the mayor was attempting to buffer for residents some of the tax hike? Yes or no?
I think she came to us with a proposal without data to back it up.
All right, Senator, I appreciate it. Some of this might not have been as spicy, and I know you're busy, but when you reach out, what do? Respond. And
no,
so
you're good. I appreciate it.
And if I reach out to converse offline to get some context that we can do this, let's do that. And then when we come back here, we won't have our
I appreciate it. And hopefully it's not a firestorm so I can actually see who's texting me in real time. But I appreciate your willingness to have me on and be fair.
Texting you right now. They're probably cussing me out. So, all right, brother. Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Happy holiday.
Thank you. Same to you and your family. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Senator, sorry. I'm going to look at my text because my phone was going bing, 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 bing. I want to summit level, y'all know that I think this was he was one of my first a couple of years ago. And then it was District Attorney Kevin Hayden and then him again. And one of my most spicy, debatable type interviews. But at the end of the day, my concern, and I said to him, is that I'm very concerned about the impact of next year. And I have to do this. You all know this is not my wheelhouse, tax law and tax relief reform. But from what I was able to look at a couple of articles, and I would see, news clips and then read the articles over the last few weeks when this came up, something to me said that this is not going to pan well for Black and brown homeowners. And then there's the whole thing about the residents who get a tax advantage if they live in their home versus the ones that don't. And then the ones that don't live in their home, I believe that they don't get that advantage. And if taxes go up, a good landlord, would try to figure out a way to absorb that. But more than likely, the landlord is going to do what? Pass that hike on to who? The renters. And I want to also name that renters are residents too. Landlords are residents too. And landlords have to do what they do. And most of them own property for the purpose of gaining wealth. And so, it's a very interesting topic, but I spoke to a very impactful, powerful real estate person and understood the commercial side. But the conversation ended with, are you for the big commercial folks, where most of these advantages really have the most advantage for the bigger corporations and bigger, large corporate commercial real estate folks. And they said that the residents are the ones that are going to feel the most impact. And so that was why, some of the energy was the way that it was. And so I am not perfect. I am not a journalist. I'm a commentator, and I commentate and try to get everything toward equity when it seems very different. And there is a lot that's different, but we're going to go. We're going to take a commercial break, and then we're going to come back, and we are going to be with you probably for the next hour and a half. As you all know, last year on December 20th, Mayor Michelle Wu apologized to the Bennett family. We're going to play that whole press conference. And we're also going to play my interview with Joey from January of this year. So we're actually going to we're going to take a commercial break, and we will be back with you. And actually, you know what? Let me go check the comments. First of all, let me share something with you, Mr. Lynch. And I won't go and check your profile and demographics, sir. What I will show you is I have enough decorum to present to you that statement right there is a full indicator of some interesting perspectives you have to automatically ask if there are free journalism classes at RCC. First of all, I'm not a journalist. I'm a commentator. I respect journalism, and they have to be biased, of which I am not. And so, sir, let's pull yourself in, sir. And let me go. I wish there was a way. Somebody check his demographic for me and let me know. Anyway, probably a plant and troll. Thank you, Auntie Paula. Good to see you in the room. Well, there's no face picture there, and that's usually an indicator of a white, racist, white, frail troll. So let's go to commercial break, folks, and we're going to come back. And Mr. Lynch, while you're watching, why don't you continue watching as the mayor apologizes for decades of racism with the police on behalf of the city of Boston, and the police commissioner apologizes to the Bennett family on one of the worst times in this city. Sir, I invite you to stay tuned. And folks, we'll be right back with you.
For the innovators, the dreamers, the risk takers, independent workers who keep our neighborhoods thriving, Connector Care from the Massachusetts Health Connector has plans for every lifestyle and budget.
Having access to affordable healthcare is for everyone in our community.
Connector Care plans help more people save on healthcare that covers all their needs. Find out if you qualify for Connector Care. Visit mahealthconnector.org or call 1-877-MA-ENROLL.
So we are back, everyone. And so we're going to go ahead and celebrate. I hate how they got here, but police reform, and you will see in Reverend Jeffrey Brown's part of the interview, he talks about how the racist history of the city is changing, how we have an elected woman Asian mayor who speaks fluent Spanish. And so this city is changing. And part of that change was unfortunately built on the backs of the Bennett family when we look at police reform. Since this, Joey Bennett received the pro not so, not to wish to prosecute. And so we're going to hear from him at 9 p.m. This evening. And so what I will encourage my audience to do is I said what needed to be said. I appreciate you all. Don't engage. So we're going to go ahead and begin the press conference. It is about 32 minutes. So some of y'all may go in and out, and UCB members, y'all are going to get a lot of points today. All right. And so we are doing this. I'm not able to do it tomorrow because we will be spending time with the governor. This Black LGBTQ platform is going to sit with the governor and chat with her about some policies and things. The first out lesbian woman governor, I'm going to go sit with her tomorrow. So we're going to air that today.
Down front.
Everyone. Thank you for being here this morning. I am joined here by leaders from our city administration, from across the Commonwealth, and most importantly, from the Bennett family and alongside Mr. Swanson. I want to recognize a few of these leaders who have helped to make sure we can be coordinated for today and for the actions that will follow as well. You'll hear in a little bit from Commissioner Michael Cox, Commissioner of our Boston Police Department. I also want to thank and recognize Frank Farrow, who's the Executive Director of Boston's Office of Black Male Advancement. You'll hear in a little bit from the Chair of the Black Men and Boys Commission, Tito Jackson, former City Councilor. I want to thank and recognize Chief Shugun Idawu, who runs our Economic Opportunity and Inclusion Cabinet in Boston. We also are grateful for Lori Nelson, who's our Senior Advisor on Racial Justice, Chief Mariangeli Solis Cervera, Chief of Equity and Inclusion, our Chief of Communications, Jessica Pierre. We also are joined by friends, partners, and inspirations in the community, Bishop Dickerson of Greater Love Tabernacle, Judge Leslie Harris, I believe Sheriff Steve Tompkins is in the room. We also, District Attorney Kevin Hayden sends his deepest apologies that he couldn't make it here today, but he very much wanted to be here and is represented by his first assistant, Ed Zabin. So thank you for being here as well. There's just so many community leaders as we move across the room. Reverend Jeffrey Brown, thank you so much. Pastor Rasan Hall from the Urban League, Lee Pelton from the from the Boston Foundation, and we're live at Singing on Java with Jimmy in the movement as well. I know there are many others, for example, former state representative Jeffrey Sanchez of Mission Hill. It was very important that he wanted to be part and present for this as well, and many, many others as I'm scanning across the room. Thank you. Thank you all for the courage and the challenge that you bring to the indispensable work of building a Boston that our residents deserve. And I know so many in this room are taking the actions that are shaping us toward the city that we know we can be. I want to recognize several members. I got some time and will treasure very deeply the moments that we had before this with the family members, just to hear directly some of the impact and some of the ongoing experiences that this family has borne and continues to. So thank you to Mr. Alan Swanson and Willie Bennett, who couldn't be here today. Thank you to Ms. Vida and Diane, Willie's sisters, Aisha, Ebony, Nicole, Nathaniel, Shannon, and Whitney, his children, the entire Bennett family, and I know we'll hear from Joey in a little bit. Your presence here is a gift in the truest sense of the word, in that it has been given to the city, but not earned. Thank you for granting all of us this opportunity today. We know that we can't imagine the strength and grace that you bring today and that you have for 34 years. And I thank you for your faith in our capacity to do better. We are here today to acknowledge the tremendous pain that the city of Boston inflicted on Black residents throughout our neighborhoods 34 years ago. The mayor's office, city officials, and the Boston Police Department took actions that directly harmed these families and continue to impact the larger community, reopening a wound that has gone untended for decades. In response to the murder of Carol Stewart and her child, and acting on a false, racist claim framing a Black man for her death, the city launched a systemic campaign targeting Black men in Mission Hill and across our neighborhoods. Black fathers, Black uncles, Black brothers, and Black sons. If you were a parent or a child or a partner or a friend, if you knew and loved a Black man in Boston, you feared for his life.
Yes. Wicked.
There was no evidence that a Black man had committed this crime. But that didn't matter, because the story was one that confirmed and exposed the beliefs that so many shared, from residents and reporters to officers and officials. At every level and at every opportunity, those in power closed their eyes to the truth because the lie felt familiar. They saw the story they wanted to see. And as a result, our Black residents suffered. As a result, Alan Swanson suffered, Willie Bennett suffered, and their families continue to suffer. On behalf of the Boston Police Department, the Mayor's Office, and the entire city of Boston, I want to say to Mr. Swanson and Mr. Bennett, the entire Bennett family, and Boston's entire Black community, I am so sorry for what you endured. I am so sorry for the pain that you have carried for so many years. What was done to you was unjust, unfair, racist, and wrong.
Say it again.
And this apology is long overdue.
Way too overdue.
To every Black resident, I am sorry not only for the abuse our city enacted, but for the beliefs and the bias that brought them to bear in the first place. There is no world in which a piece of paper undoes the harm of this part of our history. But it is my hope, and the hope of our entire administration, that you might accept this letter of apology as a small step toward accountability for the damage done by our city. If nothing else, please take this as evidence of our ongoing determination to build the Boston our Black residents deserve.
That's right, that's right.
That commitment requires all of us to look honestly at all the ways in which we've fallen short of that goal. The character of our city is measured not by what we get right, but what we get wrong and work to make right. And I want to be very clear that this is just the beginning of a much longer journey of accountability and action. And so I will have these and want to present them officially as an official letter of apology to Mr. Joey Bennett.
Thank you.
Mr. Alan Swanson. And now I'd like to turn it over to our Boston Police Commissioner, Michael Cox.
So my name is Michael Cox, and I was appointed Boston Police Commissioner, the 44th Boston Police Commissioner back in July, August 15th of 2022. You know, during the search process for a police commissioner, it was asked many times, you know, what can police do to actually build or at least repair certainly trust with communities of color when there's been a wrong in the past. And my answer back then was, you know, first and foremost, to acknowledge it, apologize for it, and then don't repeat it. So that answer then is the same answer, you know, which I'm up here today. After seeing the documentary, I was reminded about how impactful the Stewart case was on the entire city.
That's right, yes.
I was born and raised here, so I certainly understand, you know, the history involved. And particularly to the residents of Mission Hill, and certainly people of color, particularly young men, during that period. On behalf of the Boston Police Department as Commissioner, I apologize for the hurt, pain, and suffering experienced by everyone affected by the Boston Police Department, for their poor investigation on overzealous behavior and more likely unconstitutional behavior. I want to specifically apologize to the Bennett, Swanson, and DeMady family for what they may have experienced for the lack of professionalism shown by our department during this investigation. The city's a different place today than it was in 1989. The police department has changed and evolved in many ways and have ways to go. Hopefully this apology signals our commitment to learn from our past and continue to strengthen relationships with the community we serve. Thank you.
I want to invite up Joey Bennett to speak on behalf of the family and Mr. Swanson.
I want y'all to see my eyes. Look at these eyes. I lost my grandmother to this case. She passed away April 30th, 1995. A lot of y'all don't know, this stuff didn't stop with my Uncle Willie. I was wrongfully convicted for a murder I didn't commit. I was released April 30th, 2019. On the same day my grandmother passed away, I believe she sent me home to make sure this story got changed. If you look at anything, from when I walked out of the courthouse, I said two things: yard time, and we're gonna change the narrative on this Bennett hoax. We did that. So we stand before you today to address this apology extended to the Bennett family and Alan Swanson by Mayor Wu and Mr. Cox. We are truly humbled and honored to finally be receiving this apology. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge the people that are no longer with us to receive this apology: our grandmother Pauline Bennett, Miss Dolly Jenkins, and Miss Faye Nelson. Most importantly, we would like to acknowledge our family patriarch, Joey Bennett, who has shown resilience and strength throughout his entire life, no matter what anyone said. This moment is just not a personal triumph for our family, but a testament to the incredible support we receive from the Mission Hill community and friends alike. We as a family would like to acknowledge Jason here and his team for their hard work and dedication, making sure that this documentary, Murder in Boston, was shared with the world from the Bennett's perspective. His commitment and vision was instrumental in achieving our goal and changing the narrative. We did that, family.
Did that. Yes, sir.
But we did that.
Yeah, man.
We did that.
Yeah, man.
We did that. And if y'all want to ask questions, tomorrow, all of us is going to be at RCC between 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock. We're going to answer whatever questions y'all got for this family, because we've been silenced for 34 years. You know, we have 5 minutes. We're going to turn this 15. You know, and this place, for me, I haven't talked about this. We haven't talked about it for 34 years, so y'all can do the math on how many minutes that is. That's how many minutes we try to make sure y'all know about this injustice that was served to us. I like to thank you because you made the statement.
Yes.
We didn't get nothing.
Nothing.
You're right. My grandmother received $12,500 in 1995, and it was less than that because she had to cash it. In December 1995, this happened in 1989, $12,500. Like I said, my grandmother passed away April 30th. That money was gone.
My mom spent that visiting in jail.
Right.
Just to travel there and back.
Go.
Just to
Why
see if,
start speaking?
just to see if everybody wants to know if we okay, we not okay. I wasn't okay when I had to visit my dad in prison for 10 straight years. Wasn't okay when he missed my little sister's first steps. Wasn't okay when he couldn't see his mom pass away because he was in the cell. We not okay.
That's right.
We're trying to make everything okay.
This is generational trauma that they inflicted on us.
I asked my father what he want. Asked my father if he want to come here today. He said no. I said, what you want out of him? Pay me, man. That's what he said.
Right.
That's what he said.
Right.
But apology, he'll take it. He'll take it.
Appreciate the mayor for bringing everything to the forefront.
Thank you.
I just like to acknowledge Mr. Swanson in back of us. He didn't participate in the documentary. Nobody didn't look for him, nobody didn't find him. I knew where he was at. I didn't know if he wanted to be a part of this. So I knew he may not get an apology himself, personally. So he is a friend of the family, and we chose to have him stand with us in solidarity. So he can give his apology. Like him, he was wrong. He hasn't been right since that case, you know? And we just want to express our gratitude to Mayor Wu for the apology. Her courage in acknowledging the wrongdoings of the Boston police and offering a sincere apology is something we deeply respect and appreciate. It takes great humility and courage to acknowledge someone else's wrongdoings and to try to make amends. Your apology is accepted.
Yes, sir.
Your apology is accepted. The apology is accepted, and I hope we can move forward positively from this moment with the things the Bennett family has expressed to you in private. In accepting this apology, I wish to emphasize the importance of strength, resiliency, empathy, and growth. It's through these principles that we change the narrative so the world can be informed of what transpired 34 years ago and begin the process of healing from our trauma. Once again, thank y'all. So if y'all have any questions for us, y'all can come tomorrow to RCC, because we ain't answering at 5:30. You know, we did that. We did that, cuz. Did that. Thank you, man.
Now we want to invite up Judge Leslie Hurd.
I represented Ellen Swanson 34 years ago. I never expected this day. I saw the trauma that he went through. I saw the fear that he had to live through. The death threats, not just to him, but to me and to the Roxbury defendants. Of all people, Billy Dunn said that he watched my car so no one would put a bomb in it. Went down to Child Street Jail, the old Child Street Jail, where they held him separate from everyone else. Because if they put him in general population, accused baby killer, woman killer, he'd have been dead. They spat in his food, they beat on his cell door. He lived in terror. And I don't know how you undo that. You know, I learned about trauma. I didn't know I was a trauma survivor until I went to a trauma conference. I believe in restorative justice. And in order for restorative justice to occur, you have to acknowledge a wrong. That's right. And that's what happened today. We've had a number of mayors since Glenn. Nobody else had the courage, the strength to step up and say what our mayor said today. We've had a number of police commissioners. Not one of them apologized until today. Adrian Walker, I want to thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
That sort of pays the Globe back for what they did to us as a community. Your bravery, your persistence makes a difference. I am so proud of this young man.
Yes, sir.
I always wonder in the perfect world what Dr. Joey Bennett would have done. But he never got that opportunity. I always see Ellen Swanson was one of my brightest clients. You know, you get clients that you can talk to, and some you have to talk around. This was an intelligent, capable young man. But he never got the chance in life. I'm saying that we owe them something. That's right. As a community, as a city, as a nation. We can talk about reparations and all that kind of stuff, but William Bennett said it best, pay me.
That's right. That's right.
Okay? That's right. And I believe that's what we owe. We owe them more than that $12,500.
Well,
we owe them an opportunity to move forward.
yes.
We owe them an opportunity for the next generation not to have to suffer what they suffer. Not to be ashamed of the Bennett name. I'll go
That's right.
which one the young lady said
right.
that, but it has stuck with me.
Yes.
You know?
She's right here.
Yeah.
Sharita.
Yes. To be able to stand up and say, yes, I'm a Bennett.
That's right.
And I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
I got to meet some of Ellen Swanson's family over the years. I have not seen Ellen in 33 years.
That's why I dug him up.
And I appreciate that because I needed to see him. I needed to close that circle. I am proud of you. I'm proud of what you're doing with your life now. And I hope that we can all stand with them and support them and take them forward. I appreciate you, Mayor. This is bigger than anything I ever expected. I never expected an apology. Now I want the Herald, the Globe, 4, 5, and 7, all of them, to do the same. Send their apologies.
That's right.
Say they got it wrong.
Yes.
And let us start trying to do restorative justice.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Now I want to invite up the chair of our Commission on Black Men and Boys, and former City Councilor Tito Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On behalf of the Commission on the Status of Black Men and Boys, We have members here today. In my role as former District 7 Boston City Councilor, co-chair of the Embrace Boston, cousin of Ron Bell, and son of Herb Akuzulu Jackson.
Yes, sir.
First, I want to sincerely apologize to Willie Bennett and the Bennett family. Joseph Toot Bennett. Right around the same age as me. 22 years of his life. I want to apologize to Mr. Swanson. And every black man
Yes, sir.
and boy, and even those who weren't black men and boys, who were searched in the coldest winter ever in my lifetime. The winter of 1989, during a failed, racist, unjust, unconstitutional manhunt that occurred in 1989, carried out by the Boston Police Department, as well as the mayor's office at that time. I want to honor our elders here. Louis Elisa, who was our president of the NAACP at that time. Judge Harris, Reverend, who stood up for us at that time. Today is not about politics.
Say that.
Today is not about politics.
Right. Yeah.
Today is not about politics.
Say it.
It's about righteousness, truth, and healing. And understand, racism to the untrained eye, you may think it only hurts black people. But understand, it also hurt the DeMacy family, and for that matter, members of the Stewart family. To the untrained eye, it hurt all of us. But mostly, it hurt the Bennett family, the Swanson family, and in our lifetime, there are countless others who were hurt, but aren't on this side of the grave, based on racism. My message to you today is Boston, always forward, never backward, always. Boston, always forward, never backward, always. Today is a commencement, a word often used at graduations, which rightfully means the beginning, not an end. Boston owes more than apology to these families who are standing behind me.
That's right.
The city of Boston owes truth and reconciliation to these families. More importantly, Boston owes reparations to these families.
Right.
And as noted, even inflation adjusted, $12,500 wasn't enough then, and it's not enough now. We can, should, and must do more for these families.
Let's time that by 34.
Decades of life, love, experiences, graduations, birthdays, anniversaries, births, deaths, funerals, engagements, weddings, walks, runs, swims, and simple meals from families were stolen from these men and their families. Boston, always forward, never backward, always. In 2017, I went to South Africa, and I got to meet a great man named Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who was the most gracious human being I have ever met in my life. And he gave us some significant words. And he said, forgiving and being reconciled to our enemies or our loved ones are not about pretending that things are other than they are. It is not about patting one another on the back and turning a blind eye to the wrong. True reconciliation exposes the awfulness, the abuse, the hurt, the truth. It could even sometimes make things worse, Madam Mayor. It is a risky undertaking, but in the end, it is worthwhile. Because in the end, only an honest confrontation with reality can bring real healing. Superficial reconciliation can bring only superficial healing. And I state to you, Madam Mayor, there are 34 years or 32 years of folks who came before you who didn't have the courage, possibly the empathy, or the love to do what you do here today. This is not politically wise. I'm sure some have told you.
Come on, preach, Tito. Come on.
Some might have told you it's not the time to do this. But one who walks around the city of Boston let us know the time is always right. And so, in closing, I will count December 20th, 2023 as one of the most important days of my life. The ironic thing about me being up here making an apology is that I was stopped too. I was fresh too. I was dehumanized too. I'm not exceptional in any way. I just had exceptional opportunities. So I close with the words of the late, great Maya Angelou, and a message to the press. And I do want to thank Adrian, I want to thank Jason Heyer, but I also want to address the press. You have a responsibility to do what is right, to tell the right story, and just as she apologized, none might not have been you, but some of y'all were here. You must step forward.
That's right.
And apologize, atone, and speak the truth. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust I'll rise. Willie Bennett, today you are rising, my brother. Joseph Toot Bennett, today you are rising, my brother. Mama Bennett, today you are rising, my sister. Alan Swanson, today you are rising, my brother. And black men in the city of Boston.
Yes, sir.
Brothers, we are rising today.
Ladies and gentlemen, you were, we're watching rather, the apology from Mayor Wu. I'm showing this today as a precursor. Joey Bennett is coming in this evening at 9 p.m. We have one more segment that we're going to show from an interview I did with him in January. And so we're going to go ahead and play that for you, and we will wrap up after that. I thought it was important to just go down memory lane in the past year or so since the mayor issued the apology. But we're going to talk to Joey this evening and get his journey and updates from him at 9 p.m. this evening. Joey Bennett will be with us for Black Java, No Sugar, No Cream. It is after dark because it's at 9 p.m. this evening. So plan to join us at 9 p.m. Here is my interview with Joey Bennett from January of this year. and we will be back with you right after.
We are here today to talk about the impact of wrongful convictions. We're going to talk from a personal standpoint and impact with my first guest. We're going to talk more on the macro impact on the communities that are most impacted, marginalized communities, by wrongful convictions, which typically the numbers show typically are Black men. We're going to talk about that macro impact, and then at the end, we're going to talk with a sister whose mission it is to ensure that those that get to a point that they want to seek therapy and maintain their mental wellness, as well as address their mental illness, she works to ensure that she removes barriers to resources. And so we're getting ready to go into our conversation. My first guest is Mr. Joseph Bennett. He's a member of the Bennett family. My next guest after him will be Reverend Jeffrey Brown, and after that will be Naisha Deed of Pure Spark. And so some of you may be familiar with the recent documentary that was shown on another network, but this documentary highlighted for us here in Boston, for many of us that lived during that time, I witnessed it and seen it. I remember the night and things that had happened in relation to the Carol DeMady Stewart case in the Mission Hill area. And so I would like to ask my audience here in the studio, and for those of you that would like to comment online as well, please welcome my guest, Mr. Joseph Bennett of Yard Time Entertainment.
Thank you.
So I'm going to be very honest. I fluctuate. You know, in one sentence, you're Joseph. I call you Jay. But what amazed me was, for the first time in my life, I heard them call you Joey in the document. I've never heard no one call you Joey.
Joey's on my birth certificate.
Joey's on your birth certificate?
Yeah.
Not Joseph?
No.
Really? See,
Joseph is was given to me by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, so I just let him keep running with it. But my name on my birth certificate is Joey.
Is Joey? Okay, so we'll go with that. I know I was going to learn a lot today, and so for those that don't know, please introduce yourself. And in that introduction, feel free to go into a large part of your story. It's not all of who you are, but what you dealt with some years ago a few years ago in 1989, we're here to talk about that, had a huge impact on your life. So let's have a real conversation about that.
Let's do it. 1989 changed the trajectory of my life when the police stormed our house and destroyed everything in our family, pretty much. From that point on, I didn't like cops. I didn't like a lot of people. I was dealing with trauma. Obviously, I didn't know what it was back then, but now as a grown man, I figured out trauma and how to deal with that and things of that nature. But as a kid, I didn't know how to deal with it. I acted out after that. School, I stopped going to school. You know, I just became a person that was running the streets because I was running from whatever it was that was causing me to harm. You know, it was harm in the family, things like that. It was trauma, you know, things of that nature in the family, but nothing like what we experienced in 1989.
One of the things that we did an event at RCC, and your family has become more public since the documentary, but one of the things I want to highlight, it's not just you. You have been very intentional about not just you, A. Bennett, but the whole Bennett family, and there's some other, last names within that family, but you've been very intentional about talking about the macro impact. But today I want to focus on you. When you talk about what happened that night, you stopped going to school, you were running the streets and whatnot. Can I ask you an honest question? If that had not happened, do you think that would still wind up being the case?
I don't think it was, because I was so in love with basketball. Like, I was one of the kids that got to school. I was going to school. I went to school. I was doing good in school. You know, I played on my middle school basketball team. So I had dreams, goals, and aspirations. But growing up in Mission Hill Projects, some of those dreams, goals, and aspirations are not obtainable for certain people.
Yes, sir.
You know, so we try to figure out ways to just survive. So I became a person that just had to learn how to survive, just wanting to be alive.
It's so interesting, that concept of survival, being alive, and then thriving. We're going to get to the thriving because I want to make sure that folks know that despite what happened, you are thriving and excelling. We'll talk about, well, let's go right here real quick with a little bit of joy in here. You recently celebrated a birthday.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what is it, a milestone birthday or?
I mean, it's, you know, for some people it's a milestone birthday when you reach 50, but for me, it was another birthday. It was a birthday that I was just happy not to be celebrating incarcerated. You know, I tell people all the time, my milestone happened for me when I walked out of the courthouse and got a chance to have my life back after being sentenced to life in prison. So, yeah, 50 is a milestone for a lot of people, but, you know, it was just another birthday for me. I was just thankful I didn't have it inside of a prison cell.
Let's go back to that. I was intentional about mixing some joy because a lot of this, a few folks reached out and said, hey, Jimmy, we want to watch. But some that have been wrongfully convicted say it's a little triggering because it's not just you. But again, back to you. So from that night, let's talk about the impact of that night and up until you were wrongfully convicted, where you're comfortable sharing. What was it like for you from that night up until a point of the system did what it did to get you wrongfully convicted? Tell us about that.
I woke up at like 10 in the morning one day on January 16th, 1997, with a police presence that was similar to how they came in my house at the Stewart's. A whole bunch of cops kicked in my door and just said they had a warrant for my arrest and told me I was being arrested for murder. And that was January 16th, 1997. April 23rd, 1998, I was found guilty, sentenced to life in prison. I didn't get back out of prison until April 30th, 2019, when a judge decided that I didn't get a fair trial.
There's so many places where I can go. In full transparency, Joey is a friend, even though I presumed his government was Joseph. There's some things that I am, aware of, and so I want to ask about that. That wrongful conviction case was if I'm right, was a very popular case, and there was an attempt to try to tie you. Do you mind talking about and mentioning what that was?
Which case? I was wrong. Unfortunately, it was a couple of cases that I had got arrested and dragged in the public eye for, one of them being a Morning Stars case where they alleged that I had disturbed the funeral and stabbed a man 9 times. They paraded me on the newspapers, throw me away, and then, like my uncle's situation, they quietly dismissed the case without.
So publicly, let's use some of our young people's terminology. They publicly dragged
me,
but then quietly dismissed the case.
They didn't even dismiss it. They put it on Noel Pross. And if it's not a murder case, if they put something on Noel Pross, they got to 20 years.
Can you school us about what Noel, say that term?
No, so it's Noel Pross. Basically, it says that right now that we're not going to take you to trial, but if some evidence ever comes up, we're allowed to come back and take you to trial.
Okay.
So they never gave me an official dismissal. They just put me on Noel Pross. And for 20 years, I walked around with that case still open. And then this, 1997 happened.
I want to go a little bit into that based on something you just said, because we're talking about a perspective of this that we'll talk more with Naisha about later, is the mental health impact. If you could put into one word, and then you can give context, the mental health impact from 1989 up until April 30th, 97? No, April 30th.
April 23rd, 1998.
1998. What's been the mental health impact on you and your life?
I didn't really know I was dealing with mental health issues until I was waiting for my appeal, and I just was I felt like I couldn't communicate with a lot of dudes that was in the prison system with me because they looked up to me. So if they looked up to me, how am I gonna get help from them? So I just seeked out a lady that I know that didn't know me, didn't know nothing about me. And I just talked to her one day, and when I talked to her, I had a big relief that I had taken off, and I just was like, wow, this is great. Like, to be able to talk to somebody that don't know you and not be able to talk to your peers is two different things, because my peers is gonna be like, man, stop bugging, you know, you good, you strong, but you know, a clinician let me know, just let me express myself, and you know, it was relieving, and I found joy in just being able to talk to someone about the issues that I was dealing with while incarcerated and waiting for my decision, you know, because I was on my third appeal, and it was like, if I didn't get this appeal, I pretty much was gonna die in prison.
There again, a lot of people that watch often, they know I feed off the energy of the guests, and so there's so much there too. And so I would not let this opportunity pass. You are an influential man in this city. That was proven. I wish we had the pictures to show it, but at your birthday celebration, you turned out half the city of Boston.
Yeah. I didn't expect that many people to come, but I felt the love. I mean, there were some people in there that, you know, it was just some people in there that I did not expect to be there, but I was glad they was there, and that was one of the most successful events that we threw at Yard Time, you know, because there was some people in there that, you know, didn't like each other, but they still respected me enough that they kept their separate spaces, and, you know, nothing happened, and I was just so thankful for that.
I'm intentional about that question and named your influence because I want to go back to the importance of you being a man, a black man. There's this misnomer that men don't seek out health care, black men don't seek out health care, and then men won't seek out behavioral or mental health, mental wellness, sustainability, and addressing mental illness. As a black man, if you could, and we're going to ask you to, look, and I believe that camera, how important is it that we make our health, and mental health is a part of that, how important is it that we make that a priority?
For me, it's a priority because I was a child that was in and out of the prison system, child of the product of the ghetto, and like I said, I used to thrive off of people saying that I was crazy. And I ain't crazy. I'm actually smart. I just play crazy or whatever. But I was dealing with a lot. I was dealing with a lot of issue traumas that wasn't, you know, dealt with, that I just kept suppressing. And for me, mental health is a lot for me, because right now I'm 50 years old. I haven't been out of prison longer than 8 to 12 months, and I'm going on my 5th year being home free, where I know now that some of my decisions based around the past was based around me struggling to understand what I was dealing with, what I was going through, because I come from a family, you know, of addiction and things like that. So I had to make sure that I was not one of those individuals in that family, and I just picked up different things. And when I was sentenced to life in prison, that probably shook me to my core, knowing that this is where they planned for me to die at. You know, be honest, I always thought I was gonna die in the streets of Boston somewhere, because I was involved in a lot of stuff. But now being able to give back to the community, that's why a lot of our events at Yard Time is free, because, you know, me and my friends, we took a lot from this city, and some are not here anymore. Some have changed their lives, and some have still do the same things. But overall, you know, we trying to just enlighten people. Like, I'm a whole headache, but I know now that I was a whole headache because I was dealing with unsolved trauma and stuff, and I deal with that now accordingly so that I don't be a problem to anyone.
I appreciate your transparency, and I asked you to look directly into the camera because I know your influence. I also know the importance of getting our brothers into healthcare, being healthy. We joked about, you know, the certain tests and stuff we got to have now at the age of 50.
Right.
But I was intentional about that. I want to ensure that we cover two things before we go into the next segment is what what encourages you? Because the mental fortitude that it took for you to be able to, and someone in the comments said, that's real, just trying to survive and then going to striving to thriving. I don't know if I would have the mental capacity, Jay. I just don't know. To have that hanging over your head with all that you know went on that was wrong. What is your motive, and how do you stay motivated to stay it's a cliche sort of word, but to stay positive? What keeps you grounded?
Man, I have so many bad narratives about me, man. Like people that don't know me, that only heard of me, then there's people that know me that still think I'm the same young man that want to continue with the violence and the drama and the troubles. Like, my motivation is to stay out of prison like that, because all I know was going back and forth in and out of prison. So, you know, I got kids now. I got grown kids, actually 3 grown daughters that has sons and daughters.
Your grandpa.
I'm a grandpa, yeah. I'm a grandpa. So my thing is trying to break a generational curse of incarceration, you know, and drug addiction. So I just stay motivated, man, just trying to just making sure that I don't want to go back to that cage, man. That's probably I probably was depressed every single day and didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Because all I did was just pray to God, just give me one more shot, just let me get out, so my thing is just trying to make sure that I change the narrative on my name, my family name, and just as a community as a whole. Like, I was with some people that took a lot from the community, and a lot of us are now trying to give back to the community, but because we're so rooted in negativity and the conversations are so rooted in negativity with us, people can't see that.
Yeah. About you.
About
not with, yes, sir.
Yes,
I want to be clear on that. Yep.
So some people don't even want to take the chance to see if I changed or not. So, you know, with Yard Time, that's why we do everything. We have pretty much zero sponsorship. We do it off the grind. So, you know, that way people don't say, oh, well, I supported and he didn't, or they didn't. Nah, it's okay. We're going to get it done on regardless.
I appreciate that in the point of you highlighting Yard Time. Let's talk about you coming home. I had to look for a picture earlier. And one of my favorite pictures is when you was looking in the camera that day in the courtroom. I didn't want to use that picture because for me it was a good day, but I just wasn't comfortable using that picture. But from the courtroom that day, coming home, talk a little bit about Yard Time and some of the work that you've done in the community. Because again, this has happened to a lot of people, and I'm not going to say a lot come home and don't do anything, because listening to you, a lot are coming home. Steven, a lot of them are coming home doing a lot. What was the intentionality of where Yard Time came from, and you focus on mental health with them?
So I came up with the concept of Yard Time because when I was incarcerated, my letters did not show up and my visits didn't show up. I couldn't get to the phone. The next part of the joy came from when the CO yelled Yard Time.
Okay.
So I would go out in the yard, put my music on, dance around the yard, you know, just have a good time. I had started a basketball tournament, so I wanted to feel like I was in Washington Park still.
Yes, sir.
You know, so just that whole thought process, and a lot of the young kids that were coming in, we used to always say, why are you always yelling Yard Time when the CO yell it? You know, and I told them, one day I'm gonna be back on the street, man. I'm gonna build Yard Time. Yard Time was supposed to be a promotions.
Yeah, it was Yard Time Entertainment, yes.
Yes, Yard Time was a event promotions things, and, you know, dealing with my court case and being still open and my case happened inside of a nightclub, I didn't want to focus on that, so I had started shadowing a couple of guys that were doing nonprofit work, and I seen the lack of help. Like I feel like the guys that are like 24 to 50, they're forgotten. Like,
Yes.
you know, everything is between 24 and down, and the guys that are like 24 and up are being forgotten, and most of those guys are coming home to nothing. And when we come home, we want to do good, but we don't have the tools to get right. It's hard for us to get back to adjusted. If you let somebody come out after 22 years, what do you expect him to have for motivation and aspirations and goals if he's not having a proper support system? I had a village around me.
Talk about the village.
One of my bros is right there. He's standing there. He's always been with me. You know, Jamal Douglas, he's always been there. You know, I mean, these are the people that I grew up with, you know, Michael Coleman and stuff like that. But just to be able to come, when I went to court, I didn't know what my situation, my life, what my fate was going to be. When the judge gave me a bail after 22 years, I don't know who's going to have money to bail me out. But when I turned around, that picture you say when I looked in the camera, that was me smiling because my family said, yo, we coming to get you. Don't worry about that.
Yes.
You're not even going back to the jail, because usually you get a bail and somebody can't make it, you go back to the jail and wait. I didn't even make it back to the jail. I was still in the courthouse and they bailed me out. And after 22 years, I didn't know what to expect. So when I came out the courthouse, the only thing I know is the yell yard time.
And there is a clip of that.
Yeah, and you know, and I used to tell the guys that once I get to the stairs, I'm gonna dance on the courthouse steps for y'all, because y'all used to always see me dance in the yard. Nobody else never seen me dancing around. So when I had my birthday party and they shined the light on me, I was trying not to. I mean, I still got to. I wish I had the. I got to still do my two-step, man. Like, you know, it did, and it felt good. You know, it felt good. Like I said, I had 22 birthdays in prison. Probably more, because I was in and out of prison, but I had 22 birthdays straight in prison. So to celebrate my 50 out here with people that love me, people that was around, people that enjoyed themselves, that came out and it was safe, was monumental to me. You know, I mean, everybody was scared to come. Because they say, yo, he gonna have all the gangbangers and he gonna have all these people.
This is another convo, but there's impact in that, and those that have the ability to resource and pull in someone like yourself, to there's that OG model and whatnot. I listen, our time, I get to talk to you on a regular.
You do.
But I am so glad, and you made it be a easy sort of the end of the interview, because we're ending in Black Joy. That I do have the footage, y'all. I just don't, I didn't get it to the production team, but this brother danced on Saturday night. And Joey, I appreciate you. Thank you for your transparency. And thank you for, we didn't go a whole lot into it, but thank you for advocating beyond yourself. The event at RCC and everything that you've been doing has been for the yard. And so, brother, we don't do this too often, but I appreciate you. I know I might get in trouble with production, give you a little hug too, but Joseph Bennett was one of our, you can please give him a hand. And we're getting ready to go into our next segment, but I just wanted to acknowledge some of the comments online about Joseph and the impact of his words. Mama Java, who is my mother, says hello to Joseph Bennett. Michelle Smith says hello as well. Aaron Davis is saying good morning to Mama Java. And Nicole Hart is saying hello to Joey's nickname, otherwise known as Toot. And so Conchetta Johnson highlights the fact that Joseph is addressing generational curses and breaking them. And also Michelle from Facebook is naming that everyone deserves a second chance in every circumstance of life. And also Leslie is saying happy birthday to Joey as well. Belinda from Facebook is saying more needs to be done to support these men returning to their communities. They paid their price. Advocacy is needed so they don't return to prison. Belinda, I think that is such a great comment to segue into our next segment. Joseph was able, from experience, to talk directly to the impact of wrongful convictions on him as an individual. Though he does advocate for community, we got to hear a little bit behind the scenes, not so much behind the scenes, but a real personable impact on his life for 22 years in prison, that night at the house. That is the individual, and he does move in the macro of addressing things about wrongful convictions for others. My next guest is Reverend Jeffrey Brown. He is, and I know somewhere in here I'm going to get in trouble as I reference to the credibility he has through his short time of service.
Don't start.
Excuse me, see, that's what I get for being a little bit smart. Reverend Jeffrey Brown is an impactful advocate in the city of Boston and across the country. He is well known for being with the 10 Point Coalition. He is currently the associate pastor at 12th Baptist Church. We just want to acknowledge and thank Pastor Willie Broderick and Reverend Brown for also acknowledging the Bennett family a few weeks ago at their MLK event. But Reverend Brown is going to speak to us from more of a macro standpoint about wrongful convictions. We'll talk a little bit about some of what one of his most famous statements out the documentary. It's been over social media. So Reverend Brown, welcome again. You're not a stranger to the Java Cafe, but here, welcome, sir.
Thank you.
And let me try to get myself together for trying to be smart and almost choke. See, you don't mess with the preachers.
Don't mess with the preachers now. Ain't you a preacher, bro?
Reverend Brown, please say hello to the people.
Hello, people. God bless you all. Thank you all. And thank you, Reverend Hill, for allowing me to be here on this august program.
Reverend Brown, after the show, sir.
Yes, I know.
We pray that the Lord protect you. In all seriousness, Reverend Brown, you have been a mentor. You were one of, you all see a refined Jimmy, but Reverend Brown remembers when I was a little energetic around some things in an activist space. You've always engaged and gave me the opportunity to participate, influence, and inform. So I want to personally thank you for that. You were here in 1989. Can you talk a little bit about the impact on the community of what happened from 89 and up until you want to talk about transition?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to acknowledge Joey Bennett and the candor in which he spoke and the honesty. You know, he is a wonderful man to be able to speak truth in the way that he did. So it was very gratifying for me to hear, you know, and the whole idea of what happened in Boston was embodied by this docuseries, Murder in Boston, and that it came from the community's perspective was really groundbreaking, right? Something that we all knew for the past 30-something years, but to be able to see it and hear it articulated was really important. And it was as it was. It was a scorched earth type of approach to dealing with a murder and the assumption that a black man did it. And I remember driving down Parker Street in that process, and I remember there were young men up against the wall of houses, and you know the housing is not like the housing today, right? So it was the red brick walls. And I remember a young man on the ground, and the cops were looking in cars, looking for black men that they could pull over and, I guess, question and all of that. There were folks who didn't want to go into the city because of all of that, what was happening. And then I remember the utter outrage that came from the community, that was embodied in community leaders when it was discovered that the husband did it. Now, there were two detectives that knew from the beginning, or at least had suspicion from the beginning, that he was the one who killed his own wife. But they were taken off of the case because of the politics, in my opinion, that swirled around that. And so, and some of that was, you've got this increase in violence that was happening in the community. You had the police who was given unfettered powers to deal with that. And part of the fear that came from the majority community was that, this city is under siege and it could impact me, it could impact my family. And then you have this woman who is killed in a car 8 months pregnant, and the husband blaming the black man. And it was like throwing gasoline on fire.
Yes, sir.
And so it sort of affirmed for the majority community all of the stereotypes that sort of fed into that. And then they ran with it. I mean, they literally ran with it. Boston, when I first came, and it was in 1984, when I first came to the area, was a series of neighborhoods that were balkanized, right? So when I came to Boston, I had folks from, my neighborhood who would say, look, don't go into South Boston at night. There's these certain areas where you don't go, right? Because we want you to come back home, and all of that. So that was clearly the case in those days. And so that Stewart case just sort of brought to light all of the ugliness that they thought they were putting to bed after the busing crisis. One of the names that they didn't mention in the docuseries that I really thought should have been mentioned was Mel King. He was the one that was running against Ray Flynn in the 1983 mayoral race. And it was, the tensions around that was palpable. I came in 84, but I would hear about that race and hear about the things that were said, during that period of time. You had this black man who almost became mayor of Boston.
And which, Rev, would really be, it would have, I believe, been a different outcome had Mel King won. Because we are mentioning an ancestor, I just wanted to mention that we salute the family of Mel King, our powerful advocate. I remember seeing him walking down Mount Pleasant with the rainbow, and that concept actually went on to Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition. And so, Rev, let me ask you, because and I don't have it verbatim, but one of the sentiments of the comments that you made in the film was that this is not old Boston.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about the macro impact of wrongful conviction in the context of what you talked about then and where we are now in the context of wrongful conviction. Can you compare and contrast? Because those convictions a lot lean on or depend on the investigative process.
Yes.
Where are we comparison to 1989, 2024?
1989 was, as I said, it was almost like a scorched earth policy. You had folks who were going to jail, for charges while detectives were trying to build cases, on folks. That's what happened to Willie Bennett, right?
And Joseph.
And Joey, right? So you had, in Willie's case, they put him in jail holding him for that Brookline robbery. And they were working on the Stewart case, while holding him. That detective that was interviewed, Dunn, basically said that was the motivation behind that, right? So, we need to look into that case as well. But there was a lot of that happening. And the larger context was, really frightening because we did have a proliferation of guns in our community.
Yeah.
We did have,
89 was one of the worst, if you remember, was one of the worst
89
years.
and 90. Yeah. I think 1990 we had 152 homicides, 1,100 gun shootings. So we had hundreds of people dying. You had thousands of people getting shot. And you had largely young people doing that. Right. So, we're talking about, 18 and under. And so it was really frightening for the community in general. But the approach was not to, lock everybody up, right? I mean, well, the approach was to lock everybody up.
Yes.
Right. And so that you had people who were going to jail for crimes that they did not commit, but because they were associated with certain groups or in certain neighborhoods, that happened.
Which is today's database.
Exactly. And so you have people who are currently incarcerated who have the same stories as Joey. And so, we have organizations who are trying hard to do something about that, but that was a reality back then. Now it's different. When you start having police leadership that is reflective of the community.
Yes.
When you have folks like, Nora Baston and people like Commissioner Michael Cox, you start to see a different outcome. When you have docuseries like Murder in Boston, you start seeing the narrative around what happened begin to change and be more reflective of the truth that the community had to embody. And I always say, the law enforcement piece is important. There were some people, frankly, who had to go to jail because they shot and killed somebody, right? But our community was under siege in those times. When you talk about failed housing policies, when you talk about poor educational institutions within communities, when you talk about, racism, when you talk about poor health care.
You're talking about back then.
Yes.
That could be applicable. Can you say?
Exactly. So for me, what we have today is a different leadership strata.
Okay.
And I'm really grateful for our current mayor, Mayor Michelle Wu, who, has demonstrated that she's looking at things through a much different lens than before.
Let me ask you real quick and we can go on. The apology. For someone that has, I was going to say endured, but for someone who has experienced how many mayors? 5, 6?
Yeah, a bunch of them.
Over that 34, in her case 32, because she's only been in a couple of years, how significant, based on what we know of what we call Boston Poly, Boston's interesting history at the Hall and whatnot, how significant was that apology?
It was huge. I mean, for me, I could never see under the current system a mayor intentionally doing something like this. But this is a different Boston, and you have a different type of leadership that's leading this city.
And go back into that.
And so for me, to bear witness to that and to see the effects of the trauma on the faces of the Bennett family and the Swanson family, and the most impactful moment for me in that whole press event was Tito Jackson.
Oh goodness!
When he got up and sort of talked about the impact of this and the tears that flowed from him and from Joey and from other members of the family as they talked about that, and you think about the whole weight of that that has been borne by the community over all these years, for the mayor to be able to do that, and for the police commissioner to also.
And that was missed.
Yeah.
There were calls on social media, BPD, and if you know Commissioner Cox, he's not that animated. He's very even-keeled. And so we're going to have to wrap up in a couple of minutes. Rev?
Well, I'm Baptist. I can talk all day now.
Where do you see Boston going? You talk about leadership. You talk about racism. This mayor, who is an Asian woman, who speaks fluent Spanish.
Yes.
Leadership is changing, and I think because so much has been brought to surface, it's kind of going into our preacher mode. The dross is slowly but surely being burnt off.
Yes.
We pray. Where do you see Boston going in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I actually am very hopeful about the city and where we're going at this point. I think our future is much brighter than we realize. Because I think that there are many people, and not just in communities of color, right, you know, but throughout the city, that are ready for this change and are willing to be able to address some of these structural issues that I was mentioning before in our communities of color and in other places where before it always seemed like, well, we'll try to do what we can. But now you've got a mayor who's like, we've got to enact some structural change. So how do we do that? And how do we do that together?
And equitably.
And inequitably. I mean, and we've got a city council, you know, Ruth Z.
Yes, our city council president.
Our city council president is also of that mindset. And so, you know, we've got a lot of hope in the city. And I'm always encouraged by, you know, people like Joey Bennett, who, you know, despite the fact that he spent 22 birthdays straight, you know, in prison, is coming out and saying, I want to give back to the community. I want to be able to make a difference in the community. That's always, you know, that's at the heart of who we are as a people. And so, you know, the more we recognize that and the less we try to demonize people, the better we'll be as a city.
Rev, I appreciate you. We could go a whole lot longer, but we're getting ready to chat with we'll talk about the mental health impact and how we remove some of the barriers. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Reverend Brown. Let's give him a hand. Reverend Brown is so apt to speak not only to the past, talk to the present and the future as well. One of the things that guarantees a great future for us as an individual and as a community is really ensuring that we maintain our mental wellness and in issues when we have been properly diagnosed, address mental illness. You can't get diagnosed if you don't at least go and talk to someone.
Hey, everyone, we are back. We are going to get ready to, where's my sound here? We're going to get ready to wrap up. We will be back at 9 p.m. with Joey Bennett, so please join us this evening. Thank all of you in the Java Cafe for being here. You get 2 hours. You actually get 2.5 hours today for UCB members. And we'll see you this evening at 9 p.m. to catch up with Joey Bennett and see what's going on with him. So we'll see you this evening at 9 p.m. Have a great day, everybody, and we will talk to you soon. Peace, everyone.